Hook. The automatic doors of Mercy General's emergency room hissed open at 11:47 p.m., and Admiral Marcus Brennan walked through them like a man who'd seen the end of the world. His uniform was wrinkled, his jaw clenched, and when he opened his mouth, the words that came out made every nurse, every orderly, every exhausted resident freeze where they stood. Nightfall. Not a name, a call sign. The clipboard in Threnody Caspian's hand hit the floor. Her coffee followed. She didn't blink, didn't breathe, just stared at the man who had no business knowing that word, because the woman it belonged to had been declared K1CA 4 years ago in a black site operation that never officially happened. And now he was here, shouting it, in her ER. Her colleagues looked confused. The Admiral looked terrified. And somewhere in the corner of the waiting room, a man in a gray hoodie stood up and walked toward the exit, slowly, like he had all the time in the world. Threnady's heartbeat spiked. Not panic, recognition. He'd been waiting for this. If you want to see how a ghost comes back to life and makes everyone who buried her regret it, stay until the end. Like this video, drop a comment with the city you're watching from and let me know how far my story has traveled. Threnody didn't move for 3 full seconds. That was longer than most people got when their past kicked down the door and walked into their present. She felt the weight of every pair of eyes in the ER, patients slumped in plastic chairs, nurses mid-shift with their scrubs stained and their patients gone. A janitor paused with his mop still dripping onto linoleum that had seen too much blood to ever really come clean. Marcus Brennan stood in the center of it all like a monument someone had dropped in the wrong place. His face was lined, older than she remembered, but his eyes hadn't changed, still sharp. Still the kind that didn't blink when they pulled a trigger. "Threnody Caspian," he said, quieter this time, almost gentle. "We need to talk." She bent down, picked up the clipboard. Her hands didn't shake. That was training. 4 years of scrubs and double shifts and learning how to smile when people yelled at her for things that weren't her fault. None of that had erased what she used to be. It just buried it. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "Yes, you do. Doctor." Raymond Howell, the ER's attending physician, and a man who thought his MD gave him authority over everything that breathed, stepped between them. He was tall, thin, and had the kind of voice that made you want to punch him even when he was technically right. "Excuse me," Howell said, folding his arms. "This is a hospital, not a recruitment center. If you have business with staff, you go through administration." Brennan didn't look at him. "This isn't hospital business." "Then you need to leave." "I'm not leaving without her." Howell's face went red. "Security." "Let him speak," Threnody said. Howell turned on her. "You don't give orders here, Caspian. You're a nurse. Act like one." She met his eyes, held them. She'd spent 2 years working under this man, taking his condescension, his corrections, his little power plays every time he needed to remind everyone in the room that he had a degree, and they didn't. She'd let it slide because it didn't matter, because she wasn't here to win. She was here to disappear, but disappearing only worked if nobody came looking. "I'll handle this," she said. Howell opened his mouth to argue, but something in her tone made him stop. Maybe it was the flatness. Maybe it was the way she said it without asking permission. Either way, he stepped back, muttering something about filing a complaint. Threnody walked past him, past the nurse's station where her coworker Janine was pretending not to stare, past the vending machines and the bulletin board covered in safety posters nobody read. Brennan followed. She led him into a supply closet, shut the door, and turned around. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "You shouldn't be alive." And yet, Brennan exhaled through his nose. He looked tired. Not the kind of tired you got from missing sleep. The kind you got from carrying something heavy for too long. "There's a contract on you," he said. She didn't react. "How many?" "3 that we know of, maybe more." "Who ordered it?" "Someone high enough that I can't touch them. Someone who wants to make sure the Nightfall unit stays buried." Nightfall. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in 4 years. It felt strange, like hearing your own voice on a recording and realizing it didn't sound the way you thought it did. "I'm out," she said. "They don't care." "Then why are you here?" "Because one of them is in this hospital." Her stomach went cold. Not fear. Calculation. She ran through the last 6 hours in her head. Every patient, every visitor, every face she'd logged without thinking about it. ERs were chaos. People came and went. Nobody paid attention unless you were bleeding or screaming. Who? She asked. I don't know. We intercepted chatter 2 days ago. Someone's been tracking you. They know your schedule. They know your route home. And tonight, they made a move. You're sure? I staked out your apartment for the last 48 hours. Nobody showed. That means they're not coming for you there. They're coming for me here. Yes. She thought about the man in the gray hoodie, the one who'd stood up the moment Brennan said her call sign, the one who'd walked out slowly, like he wasn't in a hurry because he didn't need to be. He's already gone, she said. Who? Gray hoodie, waiting room, left 30 seconds after you arrived. Brennan swore under his breath. Did you get a look at his face? No, but I will. Threnody. Don't. She cut him off. You don't get to show up here, blow my cover, and then tell me what to do. I'm trying to save your life. I didn't ask you to. He stared at her. She stared back. 4 years ago, he'd been her commanding officer. 4 years ago, she would have followed his orders without question. But 4 years ago, those orders had gotten 11 people killed and left her for dead in a city that didn't exist on any map. You think I wanted this? Brennan said quietly. You think I wanted to find out you were still breathing and then have to tell you someone's trying to stop that? What I think, Threnody said, is that you should have burned that unit to the ground the day it went sideways. You didn't, and now here we are. I couldn't save it. She opened the door and walked out. Brennan didn't follow. She didn't expect him to. He was a good soldier. Good soldiers knew when to retreat. But Threnody wasn't a soldier anymore. She was something worse. She was a nurse who knew how to kill you and make it look like you died of natural causes. The ER was still busy when she got back. A kid with a broken arm. A woman having an anxiety attack. An old man who'd fallen and couldn't get up, and whose daughter kept apologizing like it was her fault gravity existed. Threnody moved through it all on autopilot, checking vitals, updating charts, making sure Dr. Howell had everything he needed so he wouldn't find a reason to yell at her again. Janine cornered her by the med cart. What was that about? Janine asked. She was young, maybe 26, with curly hair she kept tied back and a habit of chewing gum, even though it was against hospital policy. Nothing, Threnody said. That didn't look like nothing. He had the wrong person. Janine's eyes narrowed. He called you by name. He was confused. Threnody, drop it, Janine. The younger nurse's mouth tightened, but she didn't push. Threnody had that effect on people. She wasn't mean. She wasn't cold. She just had a way of ending conversations that made you realize pushing further wasn't worth it. She finished her shift at 7 a.m. and walked out into the parking lot where the sun was just starting to turn the sky from black to gray. Her car was a 15-year-old sedan that rattled when you hit 40 and smelled faintly of French fries no matter how many times you cleaned it. She got in, locked the doors, and sat there for a full minute before starting the engine. Brennan's words looped in her head. One of them is in this hospital. She thought about every face she'd seen tonight, every patient, every visitor, every staff member. Mercy General wasn't small. 300 beds, 4 floors, 2 wings. You could disappear in a place like this if you knew what you were doing. And if you were hunting someone, it was the perfect place to hide. So, she didn't go home. Instead, she drove to a diner 6 blocks away, the kind of place that served breakfast all day, and didn't ask questions if you sat in a booth for 3 hours nursing the same cup of coffee. She ordered eggs and toast she didn't eat and pulled out her phone. The first thing she did was check the hospital's employee portal. She had access because she'd helped IT fix a server issue 2 months ago, and they'd forgotten to revoke her elevated permissions. Sloppy, but useful. She pulled up the staff roster for the night shift. 23 people on duty. She recognized most of them. Howell, Janine, 2 other nurses whose names she couldn't remember but whose faces she knew. A handful of residents. Security. Janitorial. And then there was one name she didn't recognize, David Earnhardt, radiology tech, hired 2 weeks ago. She pulled up his file. No photo. That wasn't unusual. New hires sometimes took a while to get their badges processed. But there was something off about the hiring date. 2 weeks ago, The radiology department had been fully staffed. She remembered because one of the techs had complained about not getting overtime. So why hire someone new? She dug deeper, found the requisition form. It had been filed by Dr. Monica Travers, head of radiology. Threnody didn't know Travers well, but she knew her reputation. Thorough, meticulous, not the kind of person who hired someone on a whim. She called the hospital, asked to be transferred to radiology. A tired voice picked up on the third ring. Radiology, this is Sam? Hey Sam, it's Threnody from the ER. Quick question, do you guys have a new tech, David Earnhardt? There was a pause. Who? David Earnhardt, hired 2 weeks ago. We didn't hire anyone 2 weeks ago. Her pulse kicked up. You sure? Positive. We've been understaffed for a month. Travers has been trying to get approval for a new hire, but it hasn't gone through yet. Got it. Thanks. She hung up. David Earnhardt didn't exist, which meant someone had forged the paperwork, created a fake employee record, and walked into Mercy General with a badge that said they belonged there. And nobody had noticed. She went back to the hospital, parked in the staff lot, walked in through the side entrance where the security guard, Tony, mid-50s, 2 kids in college, waved her through without looking up from his phone. She took the stairs to the second floor, avoided the elevator cameras, and made her way to the radiology wing. It was quiet. Most of the imaging happened during the day. At night, it was just emergency scans and the occasional late-night requisition. The main office was locked, but the break room wasn't. She slipped inside, checked the schedule pinned to the corkboard. No David Earnhardt. No new names at all. But there was a locker with a combination lock that didn't match the others. The hospital-issued locks were all keyed. This one was personal. Someone had brought it from home. She pulled a paperclip from the desk, straightened it, and worked the lock. It took 30 seconds. Inside, she found a jacket, a water bottle, and a duffel bag. She opened the bag. Inside was a disassembled rifle. Threnady's hands didn't shake as she took photos. She'd seen worse. She'd carried worse. But this was different. This wasn't a battlefield. This was a hospital. People came here to get better, not to die because someone with a forged badge decided to smuggle a weapon past security. She zipped the bag shut, locked the locker, and walked out. Her phone buzzed. A text from Brennan. Where are you? She ignored it. She went back downstairs, checked the security office. The guard on duty, Tony's replacement, a younger guy named Kevin, was half asleep in front of a wall of monitors. She knocked on the doorframe. Hey, Kev. He jumped. Jesus, Threnody. You trying to give me a heart attack? Sorry, quick question. Did you see anyone unusual come through tonight? Someone you didn't recognize? Define unusual. New face. Radiology tech, maybe. Kevin frowned. I don't think so. Why? Just checking something. Can you pull up the side entrance footage from the last 2 weeks? I'm not supposed to, Kevin. He sighed. Fine, but if anyone asks, you didn't get this from me. He pulled up the footage, scrubbed through 2 weeks of recordings. Threnody watched faces blur past. Staff, visitors, delivery drivers. And then she saw him. Gray hoodie, same build, same walk. He'd come through the side entrance 6 times in the last 2 weeks. Always during the night shift, always wearing the same hospital badge. Freeze it, she said. Kevin paused the footage. Threnody leaned in. The angle was bad, but she could make out enough. The badge said David Earnhardt, radiology. And his face, she knew that face. Not personally, but she'd seen it before. In a briefing, 4 years ago, right before everything went to hell. His name wasn't David Earnhardt, it was Silas Cade. And he'd been the one who sold out Nightfall. She walked out of the security office, down the hallway, past the nurse's station where Janine was arguing with a patient about visiting hours. Her mind was moving fast now, connecting dots she'd spent 4 years trying to forget. Silas Cade had been a contractor, logistics, intelligence, the kind of guy who never got his hands dirty but made sure everyone else did. When Nightfall went sideways, when 11 operators ended up dead in a building that collapsed on itself, Cade had been the one who'd filed the after-action report. He'd called it a tactical failure. What he hadn't called it was murder, because that's what it had been. Someone had fed the wrong intel. Someone had tipped off the enemy. Someone had made sure Nightfall walked into a kill zone with no air support, no backup, and no way out. Threnody had survived because she'd been on Overwatch, a quarter-mile away watching through a scope, waiting for the signal to move in. The signal never came. Instead, she'd watched the building go down, watched the dust rise, watched the radio go silent, and then she'd disappeared. Because if someone had sold out Nightfall, they'd want to make sure there were no witnesses. So she'd buried Threnody Caspian, walked away from the uniform, the call sign, the life. She'd become a nurse because it was the one job where nobody looked too close, where you could be invisible and still do something that mattered. But Cade had found her, which meant someone had sent him. She found Brennan in the parking lot, leaning against his car like he'd been waiting for her. "You shouldn't have come back," he said. "Neither should you." "Threnody." "Silas Cade is in this hospital." Brennan went still. "You're sure?" "I saw the footage. He's been coming and going for 2 weeks under a fake badge. He's got a rifle stashed in radiology." "Then we need to get you out of here." "No." "This isn't up for debate." "You're right, it's not." She stepped closer. "Cade didn't just show up here by accident. Someone sent him, someone who knows I'm alive. And if I run, they'll just send someone else. So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to make him tell me who." Brennan's jaw tightened. "You can't do this alone." "I'm not asking for your permission." "Threnody, Marcus." She used his first name. That stopped him. "You owe me. You know you do. So either help me or get out of my way." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "What do you need?" "Time," she said, "and access to his locker." They went back inside together. Brennan stayed in the lobby, watching the exits. Threnody went back to radiology, back to the break room, back to the locker. This time, she didn't just take photos. She took the rifle apart, piece by piece, and replaced the firing pin with one from the equipment maintenance kit. It looked the same, felt the same, but it wouldn't fire. Then she put everything back exactly the way she'd found it. When Cade came for her, and he would, he'd pull the trigger and nothing would happen. And in that moment, she'd have him. But her shift started again at 11 p.m. She clocked in, tied her hair back, pulled on her scrubs. Everything normal, everything routine. Except tonight, she wasn't just a nurse. Tonight, she was bait. She worked through the first hour without incident, checked on the kid with the broken arm, cast looked good, no swelling, administered pain meds to a construction worker who'd taken a nail through his foot, helped Janine calm down a woman who thought she was having a stroke, but turned out to just be dehydrated. Dr. Howell was in rare form, snapping at everyone, double-checking orders like he didn't trust anyone in the building. At one point, he called Threnody over to review a chart and spent 5 minutes lecturing her about proper documentation, even though the chart was fine. "You need to be more thorough," he said. I was thorough. "Not thorough enough." She didn't argue, just nodded and walked away. Howell thrived on conflict. Give him nothing, and he'd move on to someone else. By 1 a.m., the ER had quieted down. A few stragglers in the waiting room, a couple of empty beds. Janine yawned and disappeared into the break room to microwave something that smelled like burned popcorn. Threnody stood at the nurse's station, updating charts, and felt the weight of someone's eyes on her. She didn't look up, didn't turn around, just kept typing. But she knew he was here. She finished the chart, logged out, walked toward the supply room like she was going to restock gloves. Halfway there, she glanced over her shoulder, gray hoodie, leaning against the wall near the vending machines, hands in his pockets, watching her. Silas Cade. He didn't look away when she caught him staring, just smiled, not friendly, not threatening, just acknowledging. "I see you. You see me. Now what?" Threnody kept walking, through the supply room, out the back door, into the hallway that connected the ER to the main hospital. It was darker here, quieter, fewer cameras. She heard footsteps behind her. Not close, not far, just there. She turned a corner, pushed through a door marked staff only, found herself in a stairwell that smelled like bleach and old coffee. The footsteps followed. She went up. 2 flights. 3. Her heart was steady, her breathing even. This was what she'd been trained for. Not the nursing, not the charts, this. On the fourth floor, she stopped, waited. The door opened. Cade stepped through. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "Am I? You could have just disappeared. I would have filed the report, said you were gone. Nobody would have looked. And you get paid either way." "Exactly." She studied him. He looked older than his file photo, grayer, thinner. But his eyes were the same, cold, calculating. The kind of eyes that did math on human lives and rounded down. "Who sent you?" she asked. "Does it matter?" "It does to me." Cade shrugged. "You already know. You're smart enough to figure it out." "Say it anyway." "Why? So you can feel vindicated? So you can tell yourself you were right all along?" He shook his head. "It doesn't change anything. You're still dead. The only question is whether you make it quick or slow." "That's not a question." "No?" "No. Because you're not going to kill me." He laughed. Actually laughed. "You think I won't?" "I think you can't." "And why is that?" "Because if you could, you would have done it already." His smile faded. "Maybe I'm just enjoying the game." "You're stalling," Threnody said. "You had 2 weeks to take the shot. You didn't. That means either you're waiting for orders or you're waiting for something else." "Smart girl." "So which is it?" Cade tilted his head. "You really want to know?" "Yes." "I'm waiting for you to run." She didn't move. "See, here's the thing," Cade continued. "You're not the target. Not really. You're the test. Someone wants to know if you're still operational, if you've still got the instincts, if you're still the woman who survived when 11 others didn't. And if I am, then you're valuable. And valuable people don't get killed. They get recruited." Threnity's stomach twisted. "Recruited by who?" "The same people who buried you the first time." She felt the floor shift under her feet. Not literally, but close. "They want me back." "Not quite. They want to make sure you're worth bringing back. That's why I'm here, to see if you still have it. And if I don't, then I kill you and move on." She let that sit for a moment, turned it over, looked at it from every angle. "You're lying," she said. "Am I?" "Yes. Because if they wanted to test me, they wouldn't send you. They'd send someone I didn't know, someone I couldn't track. You're not a test, you're cleanup." Cade's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes, just for a second. "You always were perceptive," he said. "So let's stop pretending this is anything other than what it is. You're here to kill me. The only reason you haven't is because you're trying to figure out if I have insurance." "Do you? What do you think?" He didn't answer, just stood there, running the numbers. Threnody took a step forward. "Here's what I know. You forged credentials. You smuggled a weapon into a hospital. You've been stalking me for 2 weeks. That's enough to put you away for a long time. And if I disappear, all of that evidence goes public. You're bluffing. Try me." They stared at each other. The stairwell was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the faint beep of a monitor somewhere far away. Finally, Cade spoke. "You think you're safe because you've got leverage, but leverage only works if the other side cares. And the people I work for, they don't care about evidence. They don't care about exposure. They care about results." "Then why are you still talking?" "Because I'm curious." "About what?" "About whether you're really willing to die for this." Threnody didn't blink. "I already did once." Cade left, didn't say another word, just turned and walked back down the stairs. Threnody stayed where she was, listening to his footsteps fade. When she was sure he was gone, she pulled out her phone and texted Brennan. "He knows, and he's not working alone." The response came 30 seconds later. "I know, we need to talk." She didn't go back to the ER. Instead, she went to the roof. The access door was supposed to be locked, but maintenance never fixed it, so it opened with one good shove. The air was cold. The city stretched out below her, lights blinking like a circuit board. She could see the highway from here, cars moving in neat little rows, people going places, living lives that didn't involve rifles and lockers or men who smiled while they threatened to kill you. Brennan found her 10 minutes later. "How'd you know I was up here?" she asked. You always liked high ground. She didn't argue. It was true. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city. For a while, neither of them spoke. I ran Cade's background, Brennan said finally. He's been active for the last 4 years, freelance, worked for 3 different agencies, all black budget, all off the books. And every job he took had one thing in common. They were all cleanup. Meaning he kills people who know too much. Threnody nodded. She'd already guessed that. So who's paying him now? She asked. Brennan hesitated. I don't have a name yet, but I have a lead. Tell me. The requisition for Nightfall came from the Joint Chiefs, specifically from an aide to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, a woman named Victoria Landry. The name didn't mean anything to Threnody. Who is she? Career bureaucrat. Spent 20 years in intelligence before moving to the Pentagon. She's careful, smart, and untouchable. Nobody's untouchable. She is. I've been digging for 2 days. Can't find a single piece of hard evidence linking her to Nightfall. But the timing matches. The requisition went through her office. The intel that got your unit killed came from a source she vetted. And 3 months after the operation went sideways, she got a promotion. Threnody felt something cold settle in her chest. She sold us out. I think so, but I can't prove it. Then we make her prove it. How? Threnody turned to face him. We give her what she wants, which is me. Brennan shook his head. No, absolutely not. It's the only way. It's suicide. It's leverage. If Landry wants me dead, it's because I'm a threat. So we make her think the threat is bigger than it is. We make her think I've got files, evidence, testimony, whatever it takes to make her panic. And then what? And then she makes a mistake, sends someone sloppy, someone we can trace back to her. Or she just kills you and moves on. Maybe. But I'd rather die trying than spend the rest of my life waiting for the next Silas Cade to show up. Brennan was quiet for a long time. Then he sighed. You always were stubborn. Learned from the best. He almost smiled. What do you need? Access to Landry's schedule, her communications, anything that shows where she is and who she's talking to. That's going to take time. We don't have time. Cade's going to report back. When he does, she'll know I'm onto her. We need to move before she does. How long do we have? Maybe 48 hours, maybe less. Brennan pulled out his phone. I'll make some calls. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This could still blow up in our faces. It probably will. And you're okay with that? Threnody looked out at the city again. Somewhere down there, people were sleeping, working, living. They had no idea that someone like Victoria Landry existed, that people like Silas Cade walked among them, that wars were fought in the shadows by people nobody would ever know. And maybe that was okay. Maybe that's how it was supposed to be. But Threnody had spent 4 years hiding, 4 years pretending to be someone she wasn't, 4 years letting the people who'd killed her friends walk free. She was done hiding. Yeah, she said. I'm okay with that. Hold. She went back downstairs. Back to the ER. Back to the chaos of broken bones and chest pains and people who thought they were dying but probably weren't. Janine was at the nurse's station, filling out paperwork. Where'd you go? She asked. Needed air. You okay? Yeah, fine. Janine didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. Threnody checked the board. 2 new patients. 1 possible appendicitis, 1 allergic reaction. She took the appendicitis, left the allergic reaction for Janine. The patient was a teenage girl, maybe 16, clutching her stomach and trying not to cry. Her mom sat beside her, holding her hand. Hi, Threnody said. I'm Threnody. I'm going to take care of you, okay? The girl nodded. Threnody checked her vitals. Elevated heart rate, low-grade fever, tenderness in the lower right quadrant, textbook. We're going to run some tests, she said. Blood work, maybe an ultrasound. It's going to be okay. The girl's mom squeezed her hand. Thank you. Threnody nodded and walked away. Found Dr. Howell. Told him what she'd found. Get the ultrasound, he said, and call surgery. Let them know we might have one coming. Already did. He blinked. You did? Yes. Without asking me first? You were busy. His jaw tightened. I don't care if I'm busy. You don't make calls like that without clearing it with me first. The girl's in pain. Surgery needs a heads up. I gave it to them. That's not your job. Actually, it is. Caspian, Dr. Howell. She kept her voice level, calm. I did my job. If you have a problem with how I did it, write me up. But right now, I have a patient who needs care. So unless you're planning to handle it yourself, I'm going to get back to work. She walked away before he could respond. Behind her, she heard Janine mutter, "Damn." The rest of the shift passed without incident. The girl with appendicitis went to surgery, the allergic reaction got an epi shot and went home. A drunk guy came in with a broken nose and left AMA before anyone could treat him. By 7 a.m., Threnody was exhausted, not from the work, from the weight of everything else. She clocked out, walked to her car, sat in the driver's seat and stared at the steering wheel. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You have 24 hours, no signature, no explanation. But she knew who it was from. Victoria Landry. The game had started. Threnody didn't go home. She drove west, away from the hospital, away from the apartment she'd lived in for 2 years that now felt like a trap waiting to spring. The city peeled away behind her. Strip malls, gas stations, neighborhoods where people were waking up to normal problems like traffic and taxes, and whether the coffee was strong enough. She pulled into a motel off Highway 9, the kind with hourly rates and a neon sign that flickered every third letter. Paid cash. Gave a fake name. The clerk didn't look up from his phone. The room smelled like cigarettes and cleaning solution that hadn't quite done its job. She locked the door, wedged a chair under the handle, and sat on the edge of the bed with her phone in her hand. You have 24 hours. She read it again, tried to hear Victoria Landry's voice in the words, tried to picture the woman who'd signed off on Nightfall, who'd sent 11 operators into a building rigged to collapse, who'd spent 4 years climbing the ladder while Threnody scraped by on a nurse's salary. 24 hours to do what? Run? Surrender? Die quietly? None of those felt right. She opened her contacts, found Brennan's number, typed a message, got a text. Unknown number. Says I have 24 hours. The response came fast. Don't reply. I'm working on the trace. How long? Give me 2 hours. She set the phone down, looked around the room. Water-stained ceiling, carpet that had probably been beige once. A TV bolted to the wall like someone might steal it if given half a chance. She'd lived in worse. After Nightfall, she'd spent 3 months in a shipping container in Jakarta, waiting for a contact who never showed. Then 6 weeks in a hostel in Prague, where the owner didn't ask questions as long as you paid up front. Then a year bouncing between cities, Berlin, Cairo, Buenos Aires, always moving, always one step ahead of whoever might be looking. Until she'd landed in Riverside. Until she'd become Threnody Caspian, RN. Until she'd convinced herself that maybe, just maybe, she could be normal. That illusion had lasted exactly 2 years. She stood up, paced the room. Her mind was already running scenarios, mapping exits, calculating odds, old habits, the kind that didn't go away just because you put on scrubs and learned how to start an IV. Her phone buzzed. Brennan. Trace is clean. Burner phone. Activated 4 hours ago. Last pinged a tower in Arlington. Arlington. That's where the Pentagon was. Where Victoria Landry worked. Threnody typed back. She's not hiding. No, she's making a point. Which is that she can reach you whenever she wants. Threnody stared at the screen, felt the old anger rising up, the kind she'd buried under routine and exhaustion, and the belief that none of this mattered anymore. But it did matter. It had always mattered. She made a decision. I'm going to draw her out. Brennan's reply took longer this time. How? By doing exactly what she doesn't want me to do, which is going public. There was a pause. Then, that's insane. Maybe, but it's the only move she won't see coming. Threnody, if you do this, there's no going back. Good. I'm tired of going back. She hung up before he could argue, opened her laptop, a cheap thing she'd bought at a pawn shop, nothing tied to her real identity, and started typing. Not a manifesto, not a confession, just a statement. A list of names, dates, locations. Everything she remembered from Nightfall: the mission brief, the intel source, the building coordinates, the radio chatter in the final minutes before the collapse. And at the bottom, one sentence: Victoria Landry knew. She saved it, encrypted it, set up a dead man's switch. If she didn't check in every 12 hours, the file would send itself to 20 different news outlets, congressional offices, and watchdog groups. It wasn't proof, but it was enough to start asking questions. And questions were dangerous. She slept for 2 hours. Not because she wanted to, but because her body demanded it. When she woke, the sun was higher and the room felt smaller. Her phone had 3 missed calls, all from Brennan. She called him back. "What the hell are you doing?" he said, no preamble. "My job." "Your job is to stay alive." "No, my job was to complete the mission, and Nightfall isn't over until someone pays for what happened. This isn't about payment. This is about survival." "Then I guess we want different things." Brennan exhaled, a long, tired sound. "You're going to get yourself killed." "Probably." "And you're okay with that?" "I didn't say that. I said it's probable. There's a difference." Silence on the other end. Then, "I have something." "What?" "Landry's schedule. She's got a meeting tomorrow morning at a hotel in Rosslyn. Private event. Invitation only." "Who's attending?" "Defense contractors, lobbyists, a couple of senators. It's a fundraiser technically, but really it's a networking event. Everyone who's anyone in the military-industrial complex will be there." "And you think she'll show?" "She's the keynote speaker." Threnody felt her pulse quicken. "Can you get me in?" "I can get you close. But if you walk into that room, you're exposing yourself. No cover, no backup, just you and 100 people who'd sell you out for the price of a good dinner. So it's perfect." "That's not what I said." "But it's what you meant." Another pause. "What's your plan?" "I'm going to confront her, in front of everyone." "That's not a plan. That's suicide." "Maybe. But it's also the one thing she won't expect. She thinks I'm going to run, or hide, or wait for her to make the first move, so I'm going to do the opposite." "And if she has security?" "Then I'll deal with security." "Threnody." "Marcus." Her voice softened. "I know you're trying to protect me. I appreciate it. But this is my call, not yours." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "If you're going to do this, at least let me be there." "No." "Why not?" "Because if it goes sideways, I need you on the outside. Someone who can pick up the pieces. Someone who can make sure the story gets out." "You're asking me to let you walk into a trap." "I'm asking you to trust me." Another silence. Longer this time. "Fine," Brennan said. "But if you die, I'm going to be really pissed." "Noted." She hung up and started planning. Eat. The next morning she drove back to Riverside. Not to the hospital, to her apartment. She needed clothes, a shower, something that didn't smell like motel soap and regret. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that had been nice once, maybe 30 years ago. Now it was just functional. Beige walls, thin carpet, windows that didn't seal quite right so you could hear the traffic even at 3 a.m. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and froze. Someone had been here. Not recently, but recently enough. A drawer in the kitchen was open, just a crack. She always closed it all the way. Always. She moved through the apartment slowly, checking each room. Nothing missing, nothing obviously disturbed. But someone had been here, looking, searching. For what? She thought about the dead man's switch, the encrypted file, the evidence she'd compiled. They didn't know she had it, not yet, but they suspected, and now they were trying to confirm. She grabbed a duffel bag, threw in clothes, toiletries, the laptop, left everything else. On her way out, she stopped at the door, looked back at the apartment one last time. 2 years. That's how long she'd lived here. 2 years of pretending to be someone else. 2 years of quiet shifts and small talk and takeout containers stacked in the sink. It hadn't been much, but it had been hers. Not anymore. She locked the door and didn't look back. The drive to Rosslyn took 4 hours. She stopped once for gas and coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. The highway stretched out in front of her, flat and gray and endless. She thought about Nightfall, about the 11 people who hadn't made it out. She'd known some of them well, Others, barely. But they'd all been good at what they did. Professional, careful. And they'd all trusted the intel. That's what killed them. Not the enemy. Not bad luck. Trust. She wouldn't make that mistake again. Rosslyn was corporate. Glass towers, expensive cars, people in suits walking fast like they had somewhere important to be. The hotel was near the metro station, a sleek modern thing with too much marble and not enough soul. She parked 2 blocks away, changed in the car, black slacks, white blouse, blazer, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked like she belonged, like she was supposed to be there. That was the key. Confidence. Walk in like you owned the place and most people won't question it. She grabbed her bag, left the car, walked toward the hotel. The lobby was busy, people milling around, checking phones, talking in low voices. A sign near the elevators read, "Private event, 3rd floor." Threnody headed for the stairs. On the 3rd floor, she found a hallway lined with conference rooms. One had its doors open. Inside, she could see round tables, white tablecloths, centerpieces that probably cost more than her monthly rent. People were starting to filter in. Suits, dresses, the kind of crowd that measured success in stock options and committee appointments. She scanned faces. Looking for Landry. Didn't see her, not yet. She found a spot near the back, close to the exit. Waited. 10 minutes later, the room was half full. A woman at the front, blonde, mid-40s, too much teeth when she smiled, tapped a microphone. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We have an incredible program lined up, and I know you're all eager to hear from our keynote speaker. But first, let's take a moment to recognize our sponsors." Threnody tuned her out, kept watching the door. And then she saw her. Victoria Landry walked in like she was used to being the most important person in the room. Tall, sharp suit, hair cut short and practical. She moved with the kind of ease that came from decades of navigating rooms exactly like this one. Threnodi's hands clenched. This was the woman. This was the face behind the orders, behind the intel, behind the deaths. Landry took a seat at the head table, smiled at someone, laughed at something, looked completely at ease. Threnody stood up, walked toward the front. People glanced at her, a few frowned. She wasn't supposed to be here, didn't have a badge, didn't have a seat. She didn't care. She stopped 10 feet from Landry's table. "Victoria Landry," she said, loud enough to cut through the murmur of conversation. The room went quiet. Landry looked up. Her expression didn't change, just a flicker of curiosity, like she was mildly interested in what came next. "Do I know you?" Landry asked. "No, but you killed 11 people I did know." Now the room was completely silent. Landry's smile didn't waver. "I think you have me confused with someone else." "I don't." "Nightfall, 4 years ago. You signed off on the operation. You vetted the intel. And when it went bad, you buried the report and took a promotion." Someone near the back whispered something. Threnody heard the word security. Landry stood up, slowly, still smiling. "I don't know what you're talking about, and I think you should leave before you embarrass yourself further." "I'm not leaving, not until you admit what you did." "I didn't do anything. You sent them into a trap." "You're confused." "I was there." That got a reaction, just a flicker, something behind Landry's eyes. Recognition, calculation. "You're Nightfall," Landry said quietly. "I was." "And now you're what? A disgruntled veteran with a grudge?" "Now I'm someone with evidence." Landry's smile faded. "What evidence?" "Names, dates, communications, all of it pointing back to you." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" 2 security guards appeared at the door. Big guys, earpieces, hands hovering near their belts. Landry glanced at them, then back at Threnody. "This isn't the place for this conversation," Landry said. "Then where is?" "Somewhere private, somewhere we can talk like adults." "I'm done talking." "Then what do you want?" "I want you to admit it, in front of all these people. I want you to say that you knew the intel was bad, that you sent them anyway, that you let them die so you could cover your own mistakes." Landry's face hardened. "I did no such thing." "Then why is Silas Cade working for you?" The name landed like a punch. Landry's eyes widened, just for a second, but it was enough. Threnody pressed on. "He's been tracking me for 2 weeks, Forged credentials, smuggled a weapon into a hospital, all on your orders. I don't know who you're talking about. Yes, you do. Because he's the one who filed the report after Nightfall collapsed. The one who called it a tactical failure instead of what it really was. Landry took a step forward. You need to leave. Now. Or what? You'll have me arrested? Go ahead. I've got a dead man's switch. If I don't check in every 12 hours, everything I know goes public. Every news outlet, every watchdog group, every congressional committee. So go ahead. Arrest me. See what happens. The security guards hesitated, looked at Landry. She stared at Threnody, and for the first time, Threnody saw something other than confidence in her eyes. She saw fear. You're making a mistake, Landry said quietly. No, you made the mistake 4 years ago, and now you're going to pay for it. Landry's hand moved toward her phone. Threnody moved faster. She closed the distance in 2 steps, grabbed Landry's wrist, twisted. The phone clattered to the floor. The security guards rushed forward. Threnody let go of Landry, stepped back, hands up. I'm not armed. I'm not a threat. I'm just someone asking questions. One of the guards grabbed her arm. You need to come with us. Fine. But make sure everyone here knows why. Make sure they know Victoria Landry is covering up a massacre. The guard pulled her toward the door. Threnody didn't resist, just kept her eyes on Landry, and Landry stared back. Neither of them blinked. They took her to a room on the first floor. Small. No windows. A table and 2 chairs. The kind of place where you waited for someone to decide what to do with you. One guard stayed by the door, the other left. Threnody sat down, checked her watch. 11 hours until the dead man's switch activated. Plenty of time. The door opened. Not Landry, Silas Cade. He looked different in daylight. Older, tired. But his eyes were the same, cold, empty. Well, he said, closing the door behind him, that was quite a performance. I thought so. You just made everything a lot more complicated. Good. He sat down across from her, folded his hands on the table. You know I can't let you leave here. I know you're going to try. Not try. Do. Then why are we talking? Cade smiled. Because Landry wants to make you an offer. I'm not interested. You haven't heard it yet. Don't need to. She's willing to clear your record, reinstate you, full rank, full benefits. All you have to do is walk away. Threnody laughed. Actually, laughed. You think I care about rank? Everyone cares about something. Not me. Not anymore. Then what do you want? I want her in a cell. I want the world to know what she did. And I want every person who died in Nightfall to get the recognition they deserve. That's not going to happen. Then I guess we're done here. Cade leaned back. You know, I almost admire you. You've got principles. Most people lose those after the first year. I'm not most people. No. You're a liability, and liabilities get eliminated. Not this one. Why? Because of your dead man's switch? You think that scares us? It should. It doesn't, because we both know you're bluffing. You don't have any evidence. You have memories, hearsay, nothing that would hold up in any real investigation. You sure about that? Cade's smile faded. Yes. Then why are you here? He didn't answer. Threnody leaned forward. Because Landry's scared. She knows I have something, maybe not proof, but enough to start asking the right questions. And once people start asking, they don't stop. You're wrong. Am I? Then why send you? Why not just let the guards handle it? Cade stood up. This conversation is over. Sit down, Silas. No. Sit. Down. Something in her voice made him pause. Not fear, but recognition. The kind that came from realizing you were standing across from someone who'd been exactly where you were and had come out the other side. He sat. You filed the report, Threnody said. After Nightfall, you're the one who wrote it up as a tactical failure. I was doing my job. You were covering it up. I was following orders. Whose orders? Cade didn't answer. Let me guess, Threnody said. Landry told you what to write, told you how to spin it, told you to make sure nobody looked too close. You don't know what you're talking about. Yes, I do, because I know how this works. Someone up the chain makes a mistake. Someone lower down takes the blame. And someone in the middle, someone like you, Make sure the paperwork matches the story. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Cade's jaw tightened. The intel was solid. The mission was sound. What happened was murder, was war. No, war is what happens when both sides have a chance. Nightfall didn't have a chance because someone made sure they wouldn't. Cade stood up again. This time, Threnody didn't stop him. He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the handle. "You're not going to win this," he said, without turning around. "Maybe not, but I'm going to make sure she loses." He left. Threnody sat alone in the room, checked her watch again. 10 hours. The door opened. She expected another guard, another threat. Instead, Brennan walked in. "How the hell did you get in here?" she asked. "I still have friends in low places." He sat down across from her. "What were you thinking?" "I was thinking I'm tired of waiting." "So you decided to confront a deputy secretary in front of 100 witnesses?" "Yes. And now you're locked in a room with no way out." "I have a way out." "Which is?" "The truth." Brennan rubbed his face. "The truth doesn't matter if you're dead." "Then I guess I better not die." "This isn't a joke." "I know." He looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression softened. "You know I can't protect you from this. I'm not asking you to." "Then what are you asking?" "Nothing, I'm telling you. This ends tonight, one way or another. And if it ends badly, then make sure people know why." Brennan was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device, a recording pen. "I've been wearing this since you called me yesterday," he said. "Everything Cade just said? Recorded. Everything Landry said upstairs? Recorded." Threnody stared at it. "Marcus, don't. Just take it. And if things go sideways, make sure it gets to the right people." She took the pen, felt its weight in her hand. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me. Just stay alive." He stood up, walked to the door, knocked twice. A guard opened it. Brennan looked back at her one last time. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Even if it kills me? Especially if it kills you." He left. Threnody sat alone again, but this time she wasn't empty-handed. She had proof, and that changed everything. 20 minutes later, the door opened again. Victoria Landry walked in. Alone. She sat down across from Threnody. Didn't say anything, just looked at her. Threnody looked back. "You're not what I expected," Landry said finally. "What did you expect?" "Someone angrier. Someone more broken." "I am angry, and I am broken. I'm just good at hiding it." Landry almost smiled. "I can see that." "Why are you here?" "Because we need to talk, really talk, not in front of a room full of people. Not with guards listening, just you and me." "What's there to talk about?" "The truth." "I already know the truth." "No, you know a version of it, a version that makes me the villain and you the hero, but the real truth is more complicated than that." "Try me." Landry leaned back. Nightfall wasn't supposed to happen the way it did. The intel was good, vetted, triple-checked. We had sources on the ground. We had satellite confirmation. Everything pointed to that building being a high-value target. And yet it collapsed with my entire unit inside. Because someone tipped them off. Someone on the other side knew we were coming. They rigged the building to blow. And by the time we realized it, it was too late. "So you're saying it wasn't your fault?" "I'm saying it wasn't intentional." "That's not the same thing." "No, it's not." Threnody leaned forward. "You signed off on the mission. You vetted the intel. And when it went bad, you buried the investigation and climbed the ladder. So maybe it wasn't intentional, but it was your responsibility." Landry didn't blink. "You're right." That stopped Threnody cold. "What?" "You're right. It was my responsibility, and I failed. 11 people died because I trusted the wrong source, because I didn't ask enough questions. Because I wanted the mission to succeed so badly that I didn't see the warning signs. Then why cover it up? Because if I didn't, it would have destroyed everything, not just my career, the entire program. Every operation we were running, every asset we had in the field, all of it would have been shut down, and more people would have died. So you sacrificed 11 to save how many? Hundreds, maybe thousands. Threnody felt something cold settle in her chest. And you think that makes it okay? No, I think it makes it necessary. They stared at each other. I'm not the villain you want me to be, Landry said quietly. I made a choice. A bad choice. But it was the only choice I had. And Silas Cade? Was he part of that choice too? Landry's expression didn't change. Cade did what he was told. He tried to kill me. No, he tried to assess you, to see if you were still operational, to see if you were a threat. And? And you are. Threnody stood up. Then I guess we're done here. Sit down. No. Landry's voice hardened. Sit. Down. Threnody stayed standing. Landry stood too. They faced each other across the table. You think you've won, Landry said. You think exposing me will fix everything. But it won't. It'll just create more problems, more investigations, more hearings. And at the end of it all, nothing will change. Because people like me, we don't go away. We just get replaced by someone else who'll make the same choices for the same reasons. Maybe. But at least people will know. Know what? That war is messy, that people die. They already know that. They just don't care. I care. I know you do. That's what makes you dangerous. Landry walked to the door, stopped, looked back. I'm going to give you one last chance, she said. Walk away. Disappear. I'll make sure Cade backs off. I'll make sure you're left alone. But you have to let this go. And if I don't, then we both lose. She opened the door and walked out. Threnody stood there, alone in the room, holding a recording pen that might be the only thing standing between her and a bullet. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Check the parking garage, level 3, red sedan, keys under the mat, no signature, but she knew who it was from. Brennan. She grabbed her bag, walked out of the room, down the hallway, through the lobby. Nobody stopped her. Into the parking garage. Level 3. Found the red sedan. Keys under the mat, just like the text said. She got in, started the engine, and saw the envelope on the passenger seat. Inside was a single piece of paper, a photograph. Old, grainy, black and white. It showed a younger Victoria Landry standing next to a man Threnody didn't recognize. They were in front of a building she did recognize, the same building that had collapsed 4 years ago. On the back, someone had written a date. 3 days before nightfall. Threnody stared at the photograph until the image burned into her memory. Landry looked younger in the picture, harder around the edges, less polished. The man beside her wore civilian clothes but stood like military. His face meant nothing to her, but the building behind them meant everything. She flipped the photo over again. Read the date. 3 days before nightfall went operational, which meant Landry had been there, on the ground, in the city that didn't exist on any map, in front of the building that would collapse with 11 operators inside. She'd lied. Not about making a mistake, about everything else. Threnody pulled out her phone, called Brennan. Did you leave this? She asked when he picked up. Leave what? The photo. What photo? Her hand tightened on the wheel. Someone put an envelope in this car. A photo of Landry, dated 3 days before nightfall. Silence on the other end, then, where are you? Parking garage. Rosslyn. Get out of there. Now. Why? Because if I didn't leave it, someone else did, and that means they know where you are. She started the engine, backed out of the space, headed for the exit ramp. Who else knew about the car? She asked. Nobody. I didn't even tell my contact what it was for. Then how? She saw the black SUV before Brennan could answer. It pulled in front of the exit, blocking her path. 2 men got out, same build as hotel security, same earpieces, different intention. I've got company, she said. How many? 2, maybe more. Can you get around them? She looked in the rearview mirror. Another SUV had pulled up behind her, boxed in. No. Then stay in the car. Lock the doors. I'm calling Metro Police. They'll be gone before police arrive. Threnody. She hung up, put the phone in her pocket, kept both hands visible on the wheel. One of the men approached, knocked on her window. She didn't roll it down. He knocked again, harder. She could see his face now, late 30s, clean-shaven, the kind of face that didn't show emotion because it had been trained not to. He gestured for her to get out. She shook her head. He pulled a badge from his jacket, held it up to the glass. Department of Defense, Office of Special Investigations. Real or fake, it didn't matter. He had backup, and she had nothing. She unlocked the door. He opened it, stepped back. Miss Caspian, we need you to come with us. Am I under arrest? No, ma'am. Then I don't have to go anywhere. You're a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. We'd like to ask you some questions. Ask them here. That's not how this works. She looked past him, counted 4 men total, 2 by each vehicle. None of them had weapons drawn, but all of them carried. Hip holsters under jackets. Standard issue. What investigation? She asked. I'm not authorized to discuss that here. Then we don't have anything to talk about. The man's expression didn't change. Ma'am, you can either come voluntarily or we can escalate this. Your choice. Escalate to what? Material witness detention, federal custody. We can hold you for 72 hours without charges. On what grounds? National security. She almost laughed. Almost. But the look in his eyes told her he wasn't bluffing. Where are we going? She asked. Secure location. You'll be debriefed and released once we've verified your statement. What statement? The one you're going to give us. She got out of the car slowly, kept her hands visible. Let them see she wasn't armed, wasn't a threat, wasn't going to make this harder than it needed to be. One of the men moved to pat her down. I'm a nurse, she said, not a combatant. He patted her down anyway, found her phone, took it. You'll get this back, he said. When? When we're done. They led her to the rear SUV. One man opened the back door, the other stood close enough that running wasn't an option. She got in. The door closed. Locks clicked. The interior smelled like leather and air freshener, tinted windows. No handles on the inside of the doors. She was in a mobile cell. The 2 men got in front. Didn't say anything, just started driving. Threnody watched the streets pass, tried to keep track of turns, lefts and rights, north or south. But after 10 minutes, she'd lost count. After 20, she had no idea where they were. They pulled into an underground garage. Concrete walls. Fluorescent lights. No signs, no markings. One of the men opened her door. This way. They took her to an elevator, down 3 floors. The doors opened to a hallway that looked like every government building she'd ever been in. Beige walls, gray carpet. Doors with frosted glass and numbers instead of names. They stopped at one. Opened it. Inside was a room she recognized. Not this specific room, but the type. Interrogation. Table bolted to the floor. Chairs that didn't move. Camera in the corner with a red light that wasn't blinking but probably should have been. Sit, one of the men said. She sat. Someone will be with you shortly. They left. The door locked behind them. Threnody looked around. No windows, no vents big enough to crawl through. Just 4 walls and a camera that may or may not be recording. She checked her watch. 8 hours until the dead man's switch activated. Plenty of time. Or not enough. Hard to say. They made her wait 40 minutes. Long enough to get uncomfortable. Not long enough to panic. When the door finally opened, it wasn't Landry. It was a man she'd never seen before. 60s. Gray hair cut military short. Suit that fit too well to be off the rack. He carried a folder and a coffee cup. He sat down across from her. Didn't offer his name. Do you know why you're here? He asked. Because your boss doesn't like being called out in public. My boss doesn't know you exist. Then who does? People who prefer to remain unnamed. How convenient. He opened the folder, pulled out a photograph. The same one from the car. Landry and the unidentified man. The building. Where did you get this? He asked. Someone left it for me. Who? I don't know. You expect me to believe that? I don't expect you to believe anything. I'm telling you what happened. He studied her. You were part of Nightfall. I survived Nightfall. Same thing. Not even close. He pulled out another photo. This one showed the building mid-collapse. dust and debris, bodies in the rubble. She'd seen the footage before, watched it in safe houses and motel rooms during the first year after. Watched it until she could recite every detail. 11 casualties, the man said. Catastrophic structural failure. Investigation concluded it was a tactical miscalculation. Investigation lied. Based on what evidence? Based on the fact that someone knew we were coming. You have proof of that? I'm working on it. He smiled. Not friendly, just acknowledging. You confronted Deputy Secretary Landry today, accused her of covering up a massacre, in front of a room full of witnesses. I did. Why? Because it's true. Truth is subjective. No, truth is truth. Interpretation is subjective. He closed the folder, sipped his coffee. Let me tell you how this works. You're going to sit here and answer my questions. If you cooperate, you walk out in a few hours. If you don't, you stay here until we're satisfied. Satisfied with what? That you're not a threat. A threat to who? To the stability of ongoing operations. You mean a threat to Victoria Landry? I mean what I said. Threnody leaned back, crossed her arms. Ask your questions. How long have you been planning this? Planning what? The confrontation, the accusations, the performance. It wasn't a performance, it was the truth. When did you first contact Admiral Brennan? 4 days ago. He contacted me. And what did he tell you? That someone wanted me dead. Did he say who? No. Did he offer to help you? Yes. And you accepted. Obviously. The man wrote something down. What's your relationship with Silas Cade? I don't have a relationship with him. He tried to kill me. When? 2 weeks ago, maybe longer. He's been tracking me. And you have evidence of this? Yes. Where? Somewhere safe. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he stood up. Wait here. Do I have a choice? He didn't answer, just left. The lock clicked. Threnody sat alone again. She thought about Brennan, about the recording pen, about the photograph, about Landry's face when she'd said Cade's name. Fear. That's what she'd seen. Not anger, not surprise. Fear. Which meant Landry knew more than she was saying, knew that Cade wasn't just a contractor, knew that he was tied to something bigger. And that photograph proved it. The door opened again. This time it was Landry. She walked in alone, sat down, folded her hands on the table. You're making this very difficult, she said. Good. I tried to give you an out. I don't want an out. I want justice. Justice is expensive and messy, and it doesn't bring anyone back. No, but it makes sure the people responsible don't get away with it. Landry sighed. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then explain it to me. I can't. Because it's classified? Because it's bigger than you, bigger than me, bigger than Nightfall. Nothing's bigger than 11 dead operators. You're wrong. Threnody leaned forward. Then tell me, what's so important that you're willing to bury 11 people to protect it? Landry was quiet for a long time. Then she reached into her jacket and pulled out a flash drive, set it on the table. This is everything, she said. The real report, the actual intel, the names of everyone involved. Why are you giving this to me? Because you're right, and I'm tired. Threnody stared at the drive. What's on it? Proof that Nightfall wasn't a mistake. It was a setup, and the person who ordered it is still in power. Who? See for yourself. Threnody picked up the drive, turned it over in her hand. It was small, unremarkable, the kind of thing you'd lose in a drawer and never think about again. Why now? She asked. Because you forced my hand. Because I've been carrying this for 4 years, and I'm done. Because if I don't give it to you, you're going to keep pushing until someone kills you, and I don't want that on my conscience. You already have 11 deaths on your conscience. I know. Landry stood up, walked to the door, stopped. There's a car waiting for you outside. It'll take you anywhere you want to go. But once you walk out of here, you're on your own. I can't protect you, I can't help you, and I can't stop what's coming. What is coming? The truth. and everyone who wants to keep it buried. She left. Threnody sat alone with the flash drive in her hand. 7 hours until the dead man's switch activated. She stood up, walked to the door. It was unlocked. She made her way back to the elevator, up to the garage, found the car Landry mentioned, a dark sedan, keys in the ignition. She got in, started the engine, and noticed the second envelope on the passenger seat. Inside was another photograph. This one showed Landry and the same man from the first photo, but they weren't alone. There was a third person in the frame. Threnady's blood went cold. It was Brennan. Basiem. She drove without thinking. North. Away from Rosslyn. Away from the questions. Away from everything except the photograph in her hand and the flash drive in her pocket. Brennan. He'd been there. 3 days before nightfall, which meant he'd known. All of it. The bad intel. The setup. The collapse. He'd known, and he'd sent them anyway. She pulled over, hands shaking. Not fear. Rage. She pulled out the recording pen. The one Brennan had given her. The one that supposedly had everything. She found a laptop in the back seat, probably planted. Probably part of whatever game was being played. She didn't care. She plugged in the pen. Nothing. No files. No recordings. Just an empty drive. He'd lied. About everything. Her phone buzzed. The one they'd taken. Someone had returned it while she was in the interrogation room. A text from Brennan. "We need to talk." She called him. "Where are you?" he asked. "You tell me. You seem to know everything else." Silence. "You saw the photo," he said. "Both of them. Threnody, you were there 3 days before. You knew. It's not what you think. Then what is it?" "I was trying to stop it. By sending them in anyway? By trying to pull the mission. I went to Landry, told her the intel was compromised. She overruled me. And you just accepted that? I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Not in the military. Not when your orders come from someone 3 levels above your pay grade." Threnody closed her eyes, tried to steady her breathing. "You've been lying to me for 4 years. I've been trying to protect you. By pretending you didn't know? By acting like you were on my side? I am on your side." "No, you're on your side. You've always been on your side. That's not fair." "Fair?" She laughed, bitter. "You want to talk about fair? 11 people are dead because you followed orders, because you didn't push back hard enough, because you cared more about your career than their lives." "That's not true." "Then prove it. Tell me who gave the order. Tell me who wanted Nightfall to fail." "I can't. Can't or won't. Both. Then we're done." She hung up, sat in the car, breathing hard, hands clenched on the wheel. The flash drive felt heavy in her pocket. She pulled it out, looked at it, everything Landry said. The real report. The actual intel. The names. She needed to see it. She plugged the drive into the laptop. One file. Password protected. She tried the obvious ones. Nightfall. Landry. Brennan. None worked. She tried the date from the photograph. The file opened. Inside were documents. Dozens of them. Mission briefs, intel reports, communications logs. And at the bottom, a video file. She clicked it. The video showed a conference room. 3 people sitting at a table. Landry, Brennan, and a third person she didn't recognize. A woman. 50s. Expensive suit. The kind of face that belonged in Congress or the boardroom of a defense contractor. The audio was muffled, but clear enough. "The mission is a go," the woman said. "The intel is compromised," Brennan said. "We need to abort." "Abort and we lose the window. Proceed and we gain leverage." "Leverage for what?" Landry asked. "For proving that this program works. For securing funding. For making sure we're not cut in the next round of budget negotiations." "You're talking about using them as bait," Brennan said. "I'm talking about acceptable losses. 11 operators are not acceptable. They are if it means saving 100 programs and 1,000 jobs." Landry spoke up. "And if it goes bad, then we bury it. Call it a tactical failure. Move on. And the families? Will be compensated. Quietly. Brennan stood up. I won't be part of this. You already are. You signed the order. You approved the deployment. You're in this whether you like it or not. The video ended. Threnody sat frozen. The woman. The one who'd ordered it. She rewound the video, paused on the woman's face, zoomed in. There was a nameplate on the table in front of her. Senator Patricia Hale, Armed Services Committee. Threnady's hands shook, not anger, certainty. She knew what she had to do. She drove to the nearest FedEx, made copies of everything on the flash drive, sent one copy to her attorney, a guy she'd never met but whose name Brennan had given her 2 years ago as a contingency, sent another to a journalist she'd read about who specialized in military cover-ups, sent a third to a watchdog group that operated out of New York. Then she went to a coffee shop, used their Wi-Fi, uploaded everything to 3 different cloud servers with dead man switches attached. If she didn't check in every 6 hours, the files would go public. By the time she finished, it was dark outside. 5 hours until her original switch activated. But that didn't matter anymore. She had backup, redundancies, insurance, and she had a target. Senator Patricia Hale, Bochet. She drove to Washington. Straight through the night, didn't stop except for gas and coffee that tasted worse each time. By dawn, she was parked outside a brownstone in Georgetown. Expensive neighborhood, old money. The kind of place where senators lived when they wanted to feel connected to history. She waited. At 7 a.m., the front door opened. A woman stepped out. 50s, expensive coat, same face from the video. Patricia Hale. She walked to a car parked on the street. A driver opened the door for her. Threnody got out of her car, crossed the street. Senator Hale. The woman turned, frowned. Do I know you? No, but you killed 11 people I did know. The driver moved toward Threnody. She raised her hands. I'm not armed. I'm not a threat. I just want to talk. I don't talk to strangers on the street, Hale said. Then talk to me inside, or I send this video to every news outlet in the country. Threnody held up her phone, showed the paused frame, Hale's face, clear as day. The senator's expression didn't change. That's not me. Yes, it is. And I have the full video, complete with audio. You ordering the mission, calling 11 operators acceptable losses, agreeing to bury the truth if it went bad. Hale glanced at her driver. Give us a moment. The driver stepped back. Hale moved closer, lowered her voice. What do you want? Justice. Justice is subjective. So everyone keeps telling me, but I'm pretty sure there's nothing subjective about what you did. You don't understand the situation? Then explain it. I can't. Not here. Then where? Hale hesitated. Then she nodded toward the brownstone. Inside 5 minutes. That's all you get. Fine. They went inside. The driver stayed with the car. The interior was exactly what Threnody expected. Hardwood floors, antique furniture, paintings that probably cost more than she'd make in 10 years. Hale led her to a study, closed the door. Sit. Threnody stayed standing. Hale poured herself a drink, didn't offer one to Threnody. You think you've won, Hale said. You think you've got something that matters, but you don't. I've got you on video ordering a massacre. You've got me on video making a strategic decision. There's a difference. Not to the families of the people who died. The families were compensated. With money, not truth. Hale sipped her drink. Truth is a luxury, one we can't always afford. That's the excuse every politician uses when they're caught. It's not an excuse, it's reality. Nightfall was part of a larger operation, one that saved countless lives, one that's prevented attacks you'll never hear about, one that required difficult choices. Difficult for who? You're still here, still in power, still making the same choices. Yes, because someone has to. And the 11 people who died? They didn't get a choice. They volunteered. They knew the risks. They didn't know the mission was compromised. Hale set down her glass. Neither did I. Not at the time. Liar. Excuse me? You're lying. The video shows you knew. Brennan told you the intel was bad. You ordered the mission anyway. Because the alternative was worse. What alternative? Hale was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked to her desk, pulled out a folder, handed it to Threnody. Read this, then tell me I made the wrong choice. Threnody opened this folder. Inside were reports, intelligence summaries, photos of weapons shipments, financial transactions, names of terror cells, and at the bottom, a memo. Operation Nightfall, Phase 1 of 3. Objective: insert operatives into hostile territory to establish surveillance on high-value targets. Risk: high. Success rate: 40%. Acceptable losses: 10 to 15 personnel. Projected outcome: disruption of 6 planned attacks across 3 continents. Estimated lives saved: 2,000 plus. Threnody looked up. This is hypothetical. It was intelligence-based projection, and it was accurate. The attacks were stopped. The cells were dismantled. 2,000 people are alive today because of Nightfall. And 11 are dead. Yes. You think that's a fair trade? I think it's the trade I had to make. Threnody felt something twist in her chest. Not sympathy. Understanding. And she hated it. You still lied, she said. You still covered it up. Because if I didn't, the program would have been shut down. And the next attack wouldn't have been stopped. And more people would have died. That's not your decision to make alone. Yes, it is. That's what leadership means. Making the decisions no one else wants to make. Living with the consequences, carrying the weight. You don't look like you're carrying much weight. Hale's face hardened. You don't know me. No, but I know what you did. And I know you're not going to get away with it. What are you going to do? Release the video? Go ahead. It'll be investigated, explained, justified. And in 6 months, no one will care. Because people don't care about the cost of safety. They only care that they feel safe. Maybe, but at least they'll know. Know what? That war requires sacrifice? They already know that. They just prefer not to think about it. Threnody turned toward the door. Where are you going? Hale asked. To make sure everyone thinks about it. She walked out. Behind her, she heard Hale call out, You're making a mistake. Threnody didn't look back. She got in her car, pulled out her phone, started uploading the video, and then the windshield exploded. The safe house was in Arlington, tucked between a laundromat and a Vietnamese restaurant that had been closed for renovations for 3 years. Director Aldridge's people drove her there in a black SUV with windows tinted dark enough that she couldn't see out and nobody could see in. They didn't speak during the 20-minute drive, just handed her a bottle of water and a granola bar she didn't touch. The apartment was on the 2nd floor, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. Furniture that looked like it had been ordered from a catalog in 1987 and never updated. A marshal was already inside when they arrived. Late 40s, graying hair, the kind of face that had seen too much and stopped being surprised by any of it. Ms. Caspian, he said, not offering a hand. I'm Marshal Vega. I'll be your primary contact while you're here. You need anything, you go through me. You want to leave? You clear it with me first. Understood? How long am I staying? As long as it takes. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. Vega walked her through the apartment, showed her where the panic button was, under the kitchen counter, red and obvious. Showed her the reinforced door, the security cameras, the emergency exit that led to a fire escape she'd never be fast enough to use if things went bad. Phone stays here, Vega said, holding out his hand. Threnody hesitated. I need it. No, you don't. Anyone who needs to reach you will go through official channels. Anyone else is a liability. She handed it over, watched him drop it into a Faraday bag and seal it. What about Brennan? She asked. What about him? Is he safe? He's in federal custody. Voluntarily. He'll be debriefed, same as you. After that, it's up to the prosecutors whether they file charges. Charges for what? He saved my life. He killed a man. Doesn't matter why. Process is process. Threnody felt her jaw tighten. That's not fair. Fair's got nothing to do with it. Vega moved toward the door. Get some rest. Director Aldridge will be here first thing tomorrow to start the debrief. I'm not tired. Then don't sleep, but stay inside. Don't go near the windows. Don't answer the door unless I'm the one knocking. He left. The lock clicked. Threnody stood in the middle of the apartment, alone for the first time in hours, and felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. The adrenaline was fading. The shaking in her hands was starting. She sat down on the couch and put her head in her hands and just breathed. 4 years. 4 years of hiding. 4 years of pretending. 4 years of being someone else. And now it was over. The story was out. The truth was public. And she was locked in a safe house waiting to see if justice actually meant anything, or if it was just another word people used when they wanted you to believe the system worked. She thought about the interview, about Miranda's questions, about the camera and the lights, and the moment she'd said the words out loud, that Senator Hale had known, had ordered it, had let 11 people die for political capital. People were watching that now, sharing it, commenting. Some would believe her, some wouldn't. Some would call her a hero, some would call her a traitor. She didn't care about any of that. She just wanted the people responsible to pay. Aldridge showed up at 7 a.m. with coffee and a legal pad. He was older than she'd expected, mid-60s, maybe older. White hair, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of man who looked like he belonged in a library, not running investigations into military cover-ups. "Miss Caspian," he said, setting the coffee on the table, "thank you for your cooperation." "I haven't cooperated yet." "But you will, because you want the same thing I do." "And what's that?" "Accountability." She picked up the coffee. Black. No sugar. "What do you need from me?" "Everything, start to finish. Nightfall, the mission, the collapse, what you saw, what you heard, what you did after." "I've already told all of this. Not to me, and not under oath." He opened the legal pad. "Let's start with the day before the operation. Walk me through the briefing." So she did. She told him about the mission brief, the intel package, the satellite photos showing the building, the heat signatures, the supposed high-value targets inside. She told him about the questions some of the operators had raised, why the intel felt thin, why the timing felt rushed, why backup was limited. She told him how those questions had been dismissed, how they'd been told to trust the process. Aldridge took notes. Didn't interrupt, just let her talk. When she got to the collapse, the building coming down, the radio going silent, the dust cloud rising, he stopped writing. "You were on Overwatch," he said. "Yes." "So you saw it happen." "I saw it." "And what did you do?" "I waited, listened for comms, for survivors, for anything." "How long?" 30 minutes, maybe longer. Then I pulled out." "Why?" "Because I was alone, because the building was gone, because staying meant getting captured or killed, and neither of those helped anyone." Aldridge nodded. "And after that?" "I disappeared. For 4 years." "Yes." "Why?" "Because someone had sold us out, and if I stayed, I'd be next." "Did you try to report what happened?" "To who? The people who'd sent us in? The people who'd signed off on the mission? I didn't know who to trust." "So you ran." "I survived." He wrote something down, flipped a page. "Tell me about Admiral Brennan." "What about him?" "What's your relationship with him?" "He was my commanding officer 4 years ago." "And now?" "Now he's someone who's trying to make things right. By killing Silas Cade? By stopping Cade from killing me." Aldridge leaned back. Cade was a contractor, worked for multiple agencies over the last decade. His file shows he specialized in asset recovery and threat elimination. "You mean assassination?" "Officially, no such thing exists. Unofficially, yes." "And who hired him to come after me?" "That's what we're trying to determine." "You already know." "We have theories, not proof." "Then get proof." "We're working on it. But these things take time. People are dying while you're taking your time." Aldridge's expression didn't change. "I'm aware. Which is why we need your testimony, on record, detailed. So when we bring charges, they stick." "Bring charges against who?" "Hale's dead. Landry's dead. Cade's dead. Who's left?" "The people who gave them orders. The people who funded the operation. The people who benefited from the cover-up." He paused. "There's a food chain, Ms. Caspian. Hale wasn't at the top. She was just the most visible." Threnody felt something cold settle in her chest. "Who's at the top?" "That's what we're trying to find out." The debrief lasted 6 hours. By the end, Threnady's throat was raw from talking, and her hands ached from gripping the coffee cup too tight. Aldridge had filled 20 pages with notes. He'd asked about dates, times, names, conversations she'd half forgotten. He'd asked about the photograph, the flash drive, the documents Brennan had given her. He'd asked about the explosions, the timing, the pattern, and through it all he'd maintained the same calm, measured tone, like he was cataloging facts instead of listening to someone describe how her entire unit had been sacrificed for a budget line item. When he finally closed the legal pad, Threnody felt hollow. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we corroborate. Cross-reference your testimony with the documents. Build a timeline. Identify weak points and shore them up. And then? Then we present it to a grand jury, and if they indict, we go to trial. How long will that take? Months? Maybe a year." She stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the street below. Normal people doing normal things, going to work, getting coffee, living lives that didn't involve congressional hearings and federal investigations. "I can't stay here for a year," she said. "You won't have to. Once we've got what we need, you can leave. Relocate. Start over." "I've already started over. It didn't work." "Then start again. Somewhere new, different name, different life." She turned to face him. "I'm tired of running." "Then don't run. Testify. Help us build the case. And when it's over, you can go anywhere you want. Do anything you want. Be anyone you want. As long as I stay quiet. As long as you stay safe." "Those aren't the same thing." Aldridge stood, gathered his notes. "I'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, think about what you want your life to look like when this is over. Because it will be over, one way or another." He left. Vega appeared a few minutes later with takeout, Thai food that smelled better than it tasted. She ate because she needed to, not because she wanted to. Then she sat on the couch and stared at the wall and tried not to think about the next year of her life being consumed by depositions and hearings and lawyers who'd treat her like a piece of evidence instead of a person. The TV was on in the corner, news channel, volume low. She caught glimpses of her own face on the screen, clips from the interview, headlines about the investigation, talking heads debating whether she was a whistleblower or a disgruntled veteran with an axe to grind. She turned it off. The story grew. Over the next 3 days, more outlets picked it up. The Washington Sentinel's investigation became the foundation for a dozen follow-up pieces. Reporters started digging into Hale's finances, her connections, her voting record. They found discrepancies, patterns, money flowing from defense contractors into campaign funds, votes that aligned suspiciously with donor interests. Congressional committees announced hearings. The Pentagon launched an internal review. The FBI opened a criminal investigation. And through it all, Threnody sat in the safe house and watched it happen on a screen. Aldridge came every day, asked more questions, showed her documents she'd never seen, communications between Hale's office and DoD officials, financial records showing payments to shell companies, flight logs that put Landry in the same city as Hale 3 days before Nightfall. "We're building a case," he said on the 4th day, "not just against Hale, against the entire network." "What network?" "The one that's been running black operations with congressional approval for the last 15 years. Hale was part of it. So was Landry. So were half a dozen others. And now? Now they're scrambling, destroying evidence, cutting ties, trying to distance themselves. Will it work? Not if we move fast enough." On the 5th day, he brought someone new, a woman in her early 40s. Sharp suit, no-nonsense expression. "This is Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Lansing," Aldridge said. "She's going to be prosecuting the case." Lansing sat down across from Threnody. "I've read your testimony. It's compelling. But I need to be honest with you. This is going to be hard. Defense attorneys will come after you. They'll question your credibility, your memory, your motives. They'll make you out to be unstable, vindictive, anything to discredit you." "I know." "And you're still willing to testify?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because 11 people died, and someone needs to answer for it." Lansing nodded. "Good. Because I'm going to need you to be bulletproof up there. No hesitation, no inconsistencies, just the truth." "That's all I've got." "Then we'll make it work." On the 7th day, Brennan was released. Threnody found out when Aldridge mentioned it in passing during the morning debrief. No charges had been filed, self-defense, clean shoot. The investigation was closed. "Can I see him?" she asked. "No." "Why not?" "Because he's a witness. And witnesses don't talk to each other before trial. We're on the same side. Doesn't matter. Rules are rules. She wanted to argue, wanted to demand, but she knew it wouldn't change anything. So she just nodded and went back to answering questions. The first arrest came on the 10th day. Threnody was eating breakfast, scrambled eggs that tasted like cardboard, when Aldridge walked in with his phone out. "We got one," he said. "Who?" "Deputy Secretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, a guy named Roland Trask. He was the one who approved the funding for Nightfall, signed off on the budget, authorized the black line item. And we just arrested him. Conspiracy to commit fraud, misappropriation of federal funds, obstruction of justice. Will it stick? We've got paper trails, wire transfers, emails. Yeah, it'll stick." Threnody felt something shift inside her. Not satisfaction, not yet. Just the first hint that maybe, possibly, justice wasn't just a word. "Who else?" she asked. "We're working on it. But Trask is the big one. He was the linchpin. Without him, the whole thing falls apart." Over the next week, 3 more arrests followed. A congressional staffer who'd facilitated meetings between Hale and defense contractors. A DOD official who'd buried the Nightfall investigation. A lawyer who'd helped structure the payments to make them look legitimate. Each arrest made headlines. Each one added another piece to the puzzle. And each one brought Threnody closer to the moment she'd been waiting for. The moment when someone in power actually paid. The grand jury convened on day 23. Threnody wasn't allowed to attend. Witnesses didn't get to sit in. But Lansing called her that evening with the results. 4 indictments, she said. Trask, the staffer, the DOD official, and 1 more. Who? Victoria Landry's deputy, a woman named Claudia Reeves. She's the one who actually transmitted the compromised intel to your unit. She knew it was bad, sent it anyway. Is she in custody? Not yet. She lawyered up, turned herself in this morning, bail hearings tomorrow. Will she get bail? Probably, but she's not going anywhere. We've got her passport, and she knows if she runs, it's over. Threnody sat down, felt the weight of it. This is really happening. Yeah, it is, and you made it happen. I just told the truth. Most people don't even do that. The trial was set for 6 months out. 6 months of preparation. 6 months of rehearsals. 6 months of Lansing drilling her on every detail, every question, every possible line of attack the defense might use. They're going to say you have a vendetta, Lansing said during one session, that you blame Hale for your unit's deaths, and you're using this trial to settle a score. How do you respond? I say they're right. I do blame Hale, because she's responsible. Wrong. You say you're here because the evidence speaks for itself. You say you're here to honor the memory of 11 operators who died in service. You don't make it personal. It is personal. I know. But the jury doesn't need to know that. Threnody hated it. Hated the coaching. Hated the idea that she had to perform the truth instead of just saying it. But she did it anyway, because the alternative was letting them walk. On day 60, she finally left the safe house. Not for good, just for a walk. Supervised. Vega stayed 10 feet behind her the entire time, hand near his weapon, eyes scanning every face. She walked 3 blocks, stopped at a park, sat on a bench. Normal people were everywhere, kids playing, dogs running, couples holding hands. She wondered if she'd ever be normal again, wondered if she'd ever wanted to be. The first leak came on day 75. Someone inside the defense team had given a reporter access to sealed documents. The story ran on page 1. Details about Nightfall, about the mission, about the operators who'd died, names, photos, backgrounds. Families who'd been told their loved ones died in a training accident now knew the truth. And they were angry. One of them, a widow named Sarah Kellerman, whose husband had been Nightfall's second-in-command, held a press conference, stood in front of cameras with her 2 kids and demanded answers, demanded accountability, demanded justice. Threnody watched it on the news, felt her throat tighten. Sarah's husband had been a good man, quiet, steady, the kind of operator who didn't need to be the loudest in the room because everyone already knew he was the best. And now his widow was standing in front of the world asking why. Threnody wanted to call her, wanted to say she was sorry, wanted to explain, but Lansing wouldn't allow it. No contact with the families, she said, not until after the trial. They deserve to know. They'll know when you testify. When the defendants are convicted, that's when they'll know. On day 90, Claudia Reeves flipped. She walked into Lansing's office with her attorney and offered a deal. Full cooperation, complete testimony. Everything she knew about Hale, Landry, Trask, and the network they'd built. In exchange, she wanted immunity. Lansing called Threnody that night. "What do you think?" Lansing asked. "I think she's a coward." "Maybe, but she's a coward with information we need." "So you're going to let her walk? If it means putting Trask away for 20 years? "Yeah, I am." Threnody wanted to argue, wanted to say it wasn't fair that Reeves was just as guilty as the rest of them. But she knew how this worked. You sacrifice the small fish to catch the big one. "Fine," she said, "but I want to be there when she testifies." "You will be." Chuan. The trial started on day 182. Federal Courthouse. Downtown D.C. Security everywhere. Protesters outside holding signs, some supporting Threnody, some calling her a liar. She walked in through a side entrance, Lansing beside her, Vega in front. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, families, lawyers, spectators who'd lined up at 5 a.m. for a seat. Trask sat at the defense table, suit and tie, expression neutral. Like this was just another day. The judge entered. Everyone stood. United States versus Roland Trask. Docket number 2026-CR-4451. Are both sides ready? "Ready, Your Honor," Lansing said. "Ready," Trask's attorney said. "Then let's begin." Lansing's opening statement was clean, precise. She laid out the case step by step. The mission, the compromised intel, the cover-up, the money, the deaths. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she said, "this case is about accountability, about what happens when the people we trust to protect us decide that some lives are worth less than others. The evidence will show that Roland Trask knew the intelligence was bad. He knew sending Nightfall into that building would likely result in casualties, and he authorized it anyway, not because it was necessary, but because it was convenient." Trask's attorney stood for his opening, painted a different picture, said Trask was a dedicated public servant, said he'd relied on the information provided to him, said he'd made the best decision he could with the information he had. "This is not a case about conspiracy," the attorney said. "This is a case about hindsight, about Monday morning quarterbacking, about blaming someone for a tragedy that no one could have predicted." Threnody sat in the gallery and listened and felt her hands clench. She testified on day 4. Lansing had prepped her for this, told her to stay calm, to answer only what was asked, to look at the jury when she spoke. She took the stand, raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth, and then she did. She told them about the mission, about the briefing, about the questions that had been raised and dismissed. She told them about watching the building collapse, about the radio going silent, about the 30 minutes she'd waited, hoping someone would answer. Lansing asked her about the aftermath, about what she'd done, about why she'd disappeared. "Because I didn't know who to trust," Threnody said. "Because someone had sold us out, and I was afraid if I stayed, I'd be next. And now? Now I'm here, because 11 people deserve justice, and because the truth matters." Trask's attorney cross-examined her, asked if she was certain about the timeline, about the details, about whether her memory could be trusted after 4 years. "I'm certain," she said. "But memories fade, don't they, Miss Caspian?" "Not these." "How can you be sure?" "Because I've relived them every day for 4 years. He tried to rattle her, tried to find inconsistencies, tried to paint her as unreliable, but she didn't break, because she'd been trained not to. See it. Claudia Reeves testified on day 7. She walked to the stand in a gray suit, hands shaking, eyes down. She looked smaller than Threnody remembered from the video. Lansing walked her through it, asked about the intel, about how it had been flagged as unreliable, about how she'd been told to send it anyway. "Who told you?" Lansing asked. "Victoria Landry." "And did you question that order?" "Yes." "What did she say?" "She said the mission was already approved. that pulling it would create problems, that we needed to move forward. And you did. Yes. Knowing the intel was bad. Yes. Knowing it could get people killed. Reeves's voice broke. Yes. The jury watched, some with sympathy, some with disgust. Trask's attorney went after her, asked why she'd waited so long to come forward, asked if she was testifying to save herself. I'm testifying because it's the right thing to do, Reeves said. Or because you were offered a deal. Both. At least she was honest. But the verdict came on day 12. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. When they came back, the room went silent. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of misappropriation of federal funds, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of obstruction of justice, how do you find? Guilty. Threnody didn't move, didn't react, just sat there and let the word wash over her. Guilty. Trask's face went pale. His attorney put a hand on his shoulder. The judge set a sentencing date. Thanked the jury. Dismissed them. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Threnody pushed through them, Vega clearing the way. Sarah Kellerman was waiting on the steps. She walked up to Threnody, looked her in the eye, and then she hugged her. Thank you, Sarah whispered. Threnady's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. You gave him back to me. The truth. That's all I wanted. 3 weeks later, Trask was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. The others got less. The staffer, 8 years. The DoD official, 12. Reeves walked with probation and community service. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Aldridge called Threnody the day after sentencing. It's over, he said. Is it? The case is. What you do next is up to you. She thought about that, about what came next, about who she wanted to be now that she wasn't hiding anymore. I want to go back to nursing, she said. You sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Where? Somewhere quiet, somewhere no one knows my name. That's going to be hard. You're famous now. I'll manage. 2 months later, Threnody Caspian walked into a small hospital in northern Montana and applied for a job. The director looked at her resume, looked at her face. You're the one from the news, he said. I am. Why here? Because I'm a nurse, and you need nurses. He hired her on the spot. She started the following Monday. Night shift, ER, just like before. Except this time, when she walked through those doors, she wasn't hiding. She was just living. And for the first time in 4 years, that felt like enough. But on her third night, a patient came in. Older man, late 60s, gunshot wound to the abdomen, stabilized by paramedics but fading fast. She prepped him for surgery, started fluids, called the surgeon on call. And as she worked, the man opened his eyes, looked at her. Nightfall, he whispered. Her hands froze. What did you say? You don't know me, but I know you. His voice was weak, rattling. There were 12 operators, not 11. Her heart stopped. What? The 12th one survived, and he's coming for you. Then his eyes rolled back and the monitor flatlined. Threnodi's hands moved on autopilot, chest compressions, counting, breathing for him when his lungs wouldn't. The ER erupted around her, Dr. Martinez barking orders, another nurse wheeling in the crash cart, the high-pitched whine of the defibrillator charging. Clear! His body arched. The monitor blipped, flatlined again. Again, 200. Clear! Nothing. Martinez looked at the clock, looked at Threnody. Call it. No. Again. Threnody. Again. He nodded to the nurse. 250. The paddles pressed to the man's chest. His body jerked, and the monitor beeped. Weak, irregular. But there. We've got sinus rhythm, the nurse said. Martinez moved in, checked pupils, checked breathing. Get him to surgery. Now! They wheeled him out. Threnody stood in the bay, hands covered in blood, staring at the empty gurney. 12 operators, not 11. The 12th one survived. And he's coming for you. She pulled off her gloves, walked to the sink, scrubbed her hands until the skin turned red. Martinez appeared beside her. You okay? Fine. You don't look fine. I said I'm fine. He studied her. The patient said something to you before he coded. He was delirious. Threnody, I need to check on the gunshot wound in Bay 3. She walked away before he could press further, but her mind was already racing. 12 operators. She'd counted the bodies, identified the remains, 11 dead. She'd been certain, unless she'd been wrong, unless someone had survived and stayed hidden, unless that someone blamed her for not coming back. She pulled out her phone, the personal one the hospital let her keep for emergencies. Called Aldridge. He picked up on the second ring. Ms. Caspian, I thought you were enjoying your quiet life. I need you to pull the Nightfall casualty report, the original one, not the sanitized version. Silence. Then, why? Because someone just told me there were 12 operators, not 11. That's not possible. We verified that. Verify again. Now. This is going to take time. I don't have time. If someone survived, if they've been out there for 4 years thinking I abandoned them, I'll make some calls. How long? Give me an hour. She hung up, went back to work, sutured a laceration, administered antibiotics, checked vitals on the gunshot patient who delivered the message. Still in surgery, status unknown. Her shift ended at 7 a.m. She clocked out. Drove to the small cabin she'd rented 10 miles outside town. 1 bedroom. Wood stove. No neighbors for half a mile. She locked the door, checked the windows, pulled the blinds. Then she opened the safe hidden in the bedroom closet. Inside was the handgun she'd kept from D.C., the files she'd copied, the burner phone she'd never used. She sat on the bed and waited. Aldridge called at 8:15. You were right, he said. Her stomach dropped. How? There was a 12th operator, Specialist Marcus Webb, EOD Tech. He was added to the roster 48 hours before deployment. Last-minute replacement for someone who got injured during training. And his body was never recovered. Initial assessment listed him as KYA, presumed dead, but there was no DNA confirmation, no remains. So he could have survived. It's possible. The building came down in sections. If he was in the right place at the right time, he could have made it out. Why didn't he come forward? That's the question. I pulled his file. Decorated. Clean record. No red flags. But after Nightfall, he vanished. No activity on his accounts. No contact with family. Nothing. He went ghost. Looks that way. Why would he do that? Same reason you did. He didn't know who to trust. Threnody closed her eyes. Tried to picture it. Tried to imagine what it would feel like to survive, to crawl out of the rubble, to realize everyone else was gone and the person on Overwatch had left without checking. She would have been angry too. What do we know about him now? She asked. Nothing. He's off the grid. Could be anywhere. Except he's not. He's here, or someone working for him is. The gunshot victim? Has to be. He knew the word Nightfall, knew I was there. Someone sent him to deliver a message. What message? That Webb's coming for me. Aldridge was quiet. I'll send a team. Get you back into protective custody. No. Threnody, no. If Webb's out there, if he's been waiting for 4 years, he's not going to stop just because you put me in a safe house. He'll wait. And the moment I come out, he'll be there. So what do you want to do? I want to find him first. That's a bad idea. I don't care. You're not an operator anymore. You're a nurse. I'm both, and I'm tired of running. She hung up. The gunshot patient died on the table at 9:32 a.m. Threnody got the call from Dr. Martinez. Complications from the surgery. Blood loss. Couldn't stabilize him in time. She drove back to the hospital. Went to the morgue. The body was already tagged, already prepped for transport. She pulled back the sheet, looked at his face. Mid-60s, weathered, scars on his hands that looked like burn marks, old injuries. She checked his personal effects. Wallet with a fake ID, cash, no phone, no keys, and a folded piece of paper tucked into his jacket pocket. She opened it. Inside was a photo. Black and white, grainy. It showed 12 people in tactical gear standing in front of a transport vehicle. Nightfall. She recognized most of the faces. Saw herself on the far left, younger, harder. And on the far right, barely visible, was someone she didn't remember. She flipped the photo over. One word, written in block letters. Judas. Opa. She went home, locked the doors, sat at the kitchen table with the photo in front of her. Judas, the betrayer. Webb thought she'd betrayed them, thought she'd left them to die. And maybe, in a way, she had. She'd been on Overwatch. She'd had eyes on the building. She'd seen it collapse. And she'd made the call to pull out instead of going in. It was the right call. Tactically. Strategically. Going in would have meant dying with them. But that didn't make it easier. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You left us." She typed back, "Who is this?" "You know who." "Webb, meet me. Alone. Tonight. Coordinates below." A pin dropped. Coordinates for a location 30 miles north, middle of nowhere. She stared at the message. This was a trap. Had to be. But it was also a chance. A chance to face him, to explain, to end this. She typed, "I'll be there." The response came immediately. "Come armed, I will be." She left at sunset, drove north on roads that turned from asphalt to gravel to dirt. The cabin in her rearview mirror disappeared into the trees. The coordinates led to an abandoned logging camp, rusted equipment, collapsed buildings, a clearing surrounded by forest. She parked at the edge of the clearing, turned off the engine, checked her weapon, loaded, safety off. Then she got out. The air was cold, silent, just wind through the trees and the distant call of a bird she couldn't identify. She walked into the clearing, stopped in the center. "I'm here," she called out. No response. She waited. 5 minutes? 10. Then a voice came from the tree line. "You came alone." "I did." "Hands where I can see them." She raised her hands, turned slowly. A man stepped out of the shadows. Tall, lean, face she didn't recognize, but eyes that looked familiar. He was holding a rifle, pointed at her. "Marcus Webb," she said. "Nightfall," he said back. "I didn't leave you. You didn't come back." "I couldn't. The building was gone. The radio was dead. I waited. I listened. Nobody answered. Because we were buried." "I know, and I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't bring them back." "No, it doesn't." He took a step closer. "You were supposed to be our eyes, our safety net, and when it went bad, you ran. I pulled out because staying meant dying, and dying wouldn't have helped anyone. It would have helped me, because then I wouldn't have spent 4 years thinking I was the only one who made it out, that I was the only one who survived because I was lucky or fast or just in the right place when the building came down." Threnody lowered her hands slowly. "How did you survive?" "I was in the basement, rigging charges. When the explosion went off, the floor above me collapsed, but the walls held. I dug my way out. Took me 6 hours. By the time I got to the surface, everyone was gone. You were gone. I didn't know. You should have checked." "You're right, I should have." She took a breath. "But I didn't, and I've had to live with that for 4 years, just like you have." He lowered the rifle, just slightly. "You know who did this, who sent us in." "I do, and they paid for it. Not enough. Trask got 22 years, the others got less. But they're all behind bars, or dead. The people responsible are gone. Except you." "I'm not responsible. I was a soldier, same as you, following orders, trusting the system. And when the system failed, I did what I had to do to survive. By hiding. By staying alive long enough to make sure the truth came out. And it did. The world knows what happened. The families know. The operators are honored. Their names are cleared." Webb was quiet for a long time. Then he lowered the rifle completely. "I watched your trial, read the reports, saw what you did. And I wanted to hate you, wanted to blame you, but I couldn't, because you did what I didn't have the guts to do. You came forward, you fought, you made them pay. So why am I here? Because I needed to see you, needed to know if you felt anything, if you cared. I care. I've always cared. Then why didn't you look for me? Because I thought you were dead. We all did. Your name was on the list, your body wasn't recovered, but the assumption was you were gone. He looked down. I didn't want to be found, didn't want to be part of whatever cover-up they were running, so I disappeared. Changed my name, stayed off the grid, and waited. For what? For someone to tell the truth. And when you did, when you went public, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe I could stop hiding. You can. Can I? Or am I just another loose end? You're not a loose end. You're a survivor. And there's a difference. Webb looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression softened. I've been angry for so long I forgot what it felt like to not be. I know the feeling. What do I do now? You come forward. You testify. You tell your story. You honor the people who didn't make it out. And if they come after me, they won't. The network's gone. The people in power who wanted this buried are either in prison or dead. You're safe. I haven't been safe in 4 years. Then it's time to start. He lowered the rifle completely, set it on the ground. I don't know if I can do this. You can, because you already did the hard part. You survived. They drove back together. Webb followed in his truck, a beat-up Ford that looked like it had seen better days. Threnody called Aldridge on the way. I found him, she said. Webb? Yes, he's alive. He's willing to talk. Where's he? With me. We're heading back to my place. You can send someone to debrief him tomorrow. Is he armed? Not anymore. Threnody? He's not a threat. He's just a soldier who got left behind, same as me. Aldridge sighed. Fine, but I'm sending a team to your location, just in case. I don't need a team. Humor me. She hung up. Back at the cabin, Webb sat at the kitchen table while Threnody made coffee. He looked out of place, too big for the small space, too tense for the quiet. You live here alone? He asked. I do. It's small. It's enough. He nodded, looked at the photo on the table, the one the gunshot victim had carried. Where'd you get this? A man brought it to the hospital. He was shot, died in surgery. I sent him. Why? Because I wanted to see how you'd react, wanted to know if you'd run or if you'd fight. And? You didn't run. No, I'm done running. He picked up the photo, looked at the faces. I barely remember some of them. Isn't that awful? They died and I can't even remember their names. That's not awful, that's trauma. Feels the same. She set the coffee in front of him. After the trial, the families held a memorial, all 11 names, plaques, photos, stories. You should have been there. I wasn't ready. Are you now? He looked at her. I don't know. Maybe. Then come forward. Let people know you're alive. Let the families know there were 12, not 11. What if they hate me for surviving? They won't. They'll be grateful, because it means not everyone was lost. He drank his coffee. Didn't say anything for a long time. Then, the man I sent. Did he suffer? He died on the table, but we tried. We did everything we could. I didn't mean for him to die. I know. I just needed you to know I was out there, that you hadn't won, that I was still fighting. You don't have to fight anymore. The war's over. Is it? Yeah, it is. Aldridge arrived the next morning with 2 agents. They debriefed Webb for 6 hours. Took his statement, verified his identity, ran his fingerprints and DNA against the records from 4 years ago. It all matched. Marcus Webb, specialist, EOD, Nightfall, the 12th operator. When the debrief was over, Aldridge sat down with Threnody in the next room. He's telling the truth, Aldridge said. Everything checks out. I know. This changes things, opens up new questions. Why wasn't his survival investigated? Why wasn't his name flagged when he went off grid? Because nobody cared. He was one casualty out of 11, one missing body out of many. The people running the cover-up didn't need him found. They just needed him forgotten. And now? Now he gets to tell his story, same as I did. Aldridge nodded. The families are going to want to meet him. I know. Are you okay with that? It's not about me. It's about them. They deserve to know. The memorial was held 3 weeks later in Arlington, a small ceremony, just the families, a few officials, and the press. Webb stood at the front, told his story, how he'd survived, how he'd hidden, how he'd watched Threnodi's trial and realized he couldn't stay silent anymore. The families listened. Some cried, some hugged him, some thanked him for coming forward. Sarah Kellerman, the widow who'd hugged Threnody on the courthouse steps, approached him after. "My husband talked about you," she said. "Said you were the best EOD tech he'd ever worked with." Webb's voice broke. "He was a good man." "He was, and he'd be glad you made it out." After the ceremony, Threnody found Webb standing alone by the memorial wall. 11 names carved in stone. 12 now, with Webb's added at the end. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I can breathe for the first time in 4 years." "Good." He looked at her. "What are you going to do now?" "Same thing I've been doing. Nursing, helping people, living." "That's it?" "That's enough." He smiled, just a little. "Yeah, I guess it is." 6 months later, Threnody was working a night shift when a young woman walked into the ER. Early 20s. Nervous. Holding a folder. "Can I help you?" Threnody asked. "Are you Threnody Caspian?" "I am." The woman held out the folder. "I'm Emily Trask, Roland Trask's daughter." Threnodi's stomach tightened. "I'm sorry for—" "Don't, please." Emily's voice was steady. "I'm not here for an apology. I'm here because I read everything. The trial transcripts, the documents, the testimony. And I wanted you to know that I believe you." "You do?" "My father made choices, bad ones, and people died because of them. I can't change that, but I can make sure it doesn't happen again." "How?" Emily opened the folder. Inside were documents, proposals, plans. "I'm starting a foundation for military families, for whistleblowers, for people who need help navigating the system when the system fails them. And I want you to be part of it." Threnody looked at the papers, looked at Emily. "Why me?" "Because you didn't give up. Because you fought even when it was easier to hide. Because you proved that one person can make a difference." "I'm not a hero." "No, you're something better. You're real." Threnody felt something shift in her chest. Not pride, not vindication. Just the quiet certainty that maybe, possibly, everything she'd been through had meant something. "I'll think about it," she said. Emily smiled. "That's all I ask?" 2 years later, Threnody stood in front of a congressional committee. Not as a witness, as an advocate. The Nightfall Accountability and Transparency Act had just passed. It mandated oversight for black operations, required independent review of intelligence, created protections for whistleblowers. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. After the vote, a reporter caught her in the hallway. "Ms. Caspian, how does it feel to know your testimony led to this?" "It wasn't just my testimony. It was Webb's, Brennan's, Reeves's, all of us. We all played a part." "But you were the catalyst." "I was just someone who refused to stay quiet." "Do you have any regrets?" She thought about the question, about the years of hiding, about the trial, about the people who'd died and the people who'd survived and the people who'd fought to make sure it mattered. "No," she said. "No regrets." That night, she drove back to Montana, back to the cabin, back to the quiet life she'd built. But it didn't feel like hiding anymore. It felt like home. She parked in the driveway, saw a figure sitting on the porch. Marcus Webb. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Thought I'd check in, see how you were doing." "I'm fine." "Good, because I signed up for Emily's foundation. Figured I could help, advocate for people like us." "People like us?" "Survivors." She sat down beside him. "You know we can't save everyone." "No, but we can try." They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars, listening to the wind. "You ever think about going back?" Webb asked. "To the field?" "No, that part of my life is over." "You sure?" "I'm sure. I'm not a soldier anymore. I'm a nurse, and that's enough." "What if it's not?" "Then I'll figure it out." He nodded. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Coming forward, fighting, all of it. Thanks. And for what it's also worth, I'm sorry I blamed you. You had a right to be angry. Maybe, but anger doesn't fix anything. It just keeps you stuck. No, but it keeps you alive long enough to find something worth living for. Webb smiled. Yeah, I guess it does. Threnody Caspian went back to work the next day, put on her scrubs, tied her hair back, walked into the ER and started her shift. A kid with a broken arm, a woman with chest pain, an old man who'd fallen and couldn't remember why. She treated them all, gave them care, gave them compassion, gave them the same attention she'd given to the operators she'd served with, the fight she'd waged, the truth she'd demanded, because that's who she was. Not Nightfall, not a ghost, not a victim, just Threnody, Caspian, nurse, advocate, survivor, and someone who'd learned that the strongest weapon you could carry wasn't a gun or a secret or even the truth. It was the refusal to be silenced. The world had tried to bury her, had tried to erase her, had tried to make her disappear, but she'd refused. And in refusing, she'd become something they couldn't touch. She'd become free.